校卒業時般若波羅蜜多自称言語回復同一切苦役者利子式空意空空意識式即税空空即税式重創病死薬部尿税者利子税証拠損不証拠不空不上不増不減税国中無式無創業式無限意味税式意無式証拠未足無限界内し無意識外無無明薬無無明人内し無老死薬無老死人無復讐滅動無知薬無得意無常特攻防大三角般若波羅蜜多法身無定義無定義無空不音理一切天道無即行で完全成仏へ般若波羅蜜多法空の歌三脈三宝大法地般若波羅蜜多税大二種税大名種税無上種税無等同種無上一切空真実無法説般若波羅蜜多種無節種圧ギャテギャテハラギャテハロギャテボリソワカ般若心経
And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the monastery, the open bar of the internet, the world's greatest shit show, and the place where we, the good brothers and sisters of this most holy of temples, seek enlightenment through the drunkest, craziest, and most batshit ways possible. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me I have a returning good brother into the temple. Previously here for things like Abaddon and Skies Above, and now coming back to us with Wild Space. And I promise I will do my best to not make any barrel roll jokes. The one and only LostHaven. How you doing today, man?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on once again. Wasn't expecting it to be quite as soon as this, but yep.
Well, I've learned in doing this to expect the unexpected.
Yeah, that's fair.
So, and I know I hinted at that earlier, but when I went through Wild Space, I had gotten a very strong Star Fox vibe.
Oh yeah, well,
was that intentional, or did that just kind of happen that way?
no, that was intentional. Having been on the channel like twice before, we always end up talking about how video games have an influence on the games that I design, and yeah, that's another example of video games having an influence on my approach to designing games, particularly the vibes and settings and stuff like that for the games that I tend to make.
Yeah. I suppose I could also bring up Bucky O'Hare, but I got more Star Fox than Bucky O'Hare out of this.
Yeah. So yeah, the three elements that I'd kind of put in there would be like Star Fox, Saturday morning cartoons, and westerns.
Which definitely makes sense. I've advocated for the longest time that when it comes to space opera, the similarities between it and the western end up getting understated by a lot of people.
Yeah, but if you watch things like Star Wars and stuff, it's like really obvious.
Yeah, and the whole Han shot first thing is a blatant nod to, I think it was the Wild Bunch.
Yeah, I can see that's actually the first time I've kind of that's been pointed out. But yeah, I can see that.
Well, there's a whole scene where that is a very much of a nod to that. It's just the infamous bathtub shot scene from I believe it was either the Wild Bunch or the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. It's been a while since I've seen both, but
Yeah.
And I will admit a bit of bias because of certain sci-fi works that I grew up on, whether it be the space western trilogy in my early days with anime, or even things like Firefly.
Yeah.
But you usually have space as this unexplored frontier in a lot of sci-fi settings, so that naturally lends itself to the western.
Yeah, definitely.
I remember Chuck Sonnenberg talking about it and saying, "It is the story of a man in a place, neither of which can be tamed."
Yeah. Yeah, that applies very much to a western or sci-fi exploration-y sort of settings.
Yeah, and now when it comes to the core mechanic for this, you went with a hit-based D6. Was that mainly to just keep things simple on the side of things?
So it was a combination of things. There's like a roll and keep style mechanic with the dice pool, and you spend your successes to take multiple actions during complex situations like combats. And I'd used a similar dice mechanic for my first role-playing game, Iruzumi, but it was based off the Caltrop system. This I kind of decided that D6s were a lot more accessible. People don't have a love-hate relationship with the D6 like they tend to do with other particular types of dice. And yeah, like accessibility plus sort of experimenting and building on something that I'd already played around with previously with game design.
Yeah, and now one of the tricky things whenever it comes to doing the space opera approach is combat, but more specifically combat involving ships. And this is the other reason I brought up Star Fox, because that is going to be a very specific style of combat. The starfighter dogfighting approach that is going to be adjacent to that, and it looks like you're emulating that through more of a zone system. That I think you're going with hexes instead of the usual square approach.
Yeah. In the examples in the book, it uses hexes, but when running demos and test playing and stuff, I was like drawing squiggly lines across star images and stuff like that just to make really loose zones, which plays better to theatre of the mind style play, but that gives you that option that you can use a more rigid grid system if that's more your vibe. Zones seemed like a good way of kind of simplifying things like range and movement and stuff like that.
Yeah, I can get that, and it also means that you don't have to worry about trying to be somewhat realistic when it comes to location or the range of attacks, which I found that whenever people try to go that kind of realistic, it ends up making things unrealistic in completely different ways.
Yeah, like when you have things like, this assault rifle can shoot 120 feet, and you're like, does that actually make sense? I don't know, but like, yeah.
120 feet for an assault rifle, when real world assault, when real world SMG can be fired at 200 yards.
Yeah. Then it just kind of it can complicate things or it can break immersion. It's keeping it simple, keeping it more narrative and just quick to play through. I think is it tends to be how I design most of my games. Is I like things to run quite smoothly.
Yeah, and speaking of that whole trading in successes that you mentioned,
yeah,
that brings me to the stance approach that you do in combat with course of action.
Yeah.
What prompted that? What prompted that approach?
So the course of action approach is more like, instead of your turn in combat being like a single round of action, every time you're trading dice during that round, you're undertaking a different action that fits within the stance or course of action that you're choosing to take. So you can fire at multiple targets, you can move multiple zones, as long as you've got enough successes in your dice pool to allow for it. And it just... experimenting with it felt like a nice way to sort of portray lots of things going on at one time without needing lots of separate dice rolls for every single action.
And same thing just applies just as well for the dogfighting variant, which if you're dealing with these kind of starfighters, that's going to be inevitable.
Yeah. The starfighters have some options available to them that your individual characters don't, where you can use fuel to let you move faster or change initiative or do more damage or regenerate your shields and things like that. So the starfighters have an extra mechanical element to them that just sort of emphasizes that being in a starfighter allows you to do that little bit more than you could if you were on foot getting into a gunfight.
Yeah, I can certainly get that. And when it comes to the archetype system that you have for characters, was there a bit of treating it like a starting package more than what people would consider a class?
Yeah, because I tend to favour games that don't use levels, and so Wild Space isn't different in that regard. Like you choose your archetype to start with, it gives you your starting skills, some unique abilities to those archetypes, and some little tweaks you can make to your starfighter. But from that point on, you can expand your character in any direction you want to go by picking up the skill ranks to do it. So like you could make a character who's a charmer, like the more social oriented class, like archetype, and through gameplay, as you advance your character, you can maybe start building into things like transients, which is the psychic powers in Wild Space, to kind of expand upon your already influential and manipulative skill boost.
And speaking of that, I'd like to play a little bit of character association with the archetypes you have, and who, whether it be in Star Fox or a different media, would fit that particular archetype as a representative.
Yeah.
First, of course, being the charmer.
Okay, for the charmer, you're probably talking Fox McCloud. He's the leader of the group, he does all the talking, he makes all the decisions. Mm-hmm. He's a decent pilot. It's your kind of face of the group.
Yeah.
Is going to be your charmer.
The Guardian.
The Guardian's a hard one to place. Definitely more of the bodyguard type character. I don't think there is a comparison in Star Fox to that, but like for other games like your Final Fantasy, like Steiner and Final Fantasy 9,
Oh,
person that looked out for the rest of the party.
yeah. I was talking with a friend about Knights of the Old Republic recently, so I suppose I could throw in Big Z.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, I would say Canderous, but Canderous is not really a protector.
No.
But then there's the Hunter.
The Hunter is very much your I'm there to kill stuff character archetype. Falco would maybe be the fit for that in Star Fox. He's the ace pilot that's good at gunning down enemy fighters during your dogfights.
Mm-hmm. And often the one who's most in and out of the team.
Yeah. Likes to go off and do his own thing. Yeah.
But this might be another one that'd be a bit tricky, but the Mystic.
Mystic. Maybe my initial inspiration was Crystal from Star Fox Adventures, but there's also some elements of being a Jedi in there with the psychic sort of mystical powers that not everybody in the galaxy quite understands.
Which I can certainly get. The Savant.
The Savant for Star Fox, probably Slippy. They're definitely your skill specialists. They're good with computers, they're good with sciences, tend to be the medic in the group, the support of the group, but not necessarily the most combat ready.
Yeah, given how... If you were to do a drinking game out of the number of times you have to bail out Slippy, you'd probably end up on the floor or worse.
Yeah, getting your stomach pumped.
For legal reasons, I do not endorse doing that kind of drinking game. If somebody does that, then I take no responsibility.
Yeah, that's on you. You chose to do that.
But the last would be the Scavenger.
Scavenger. Probably better to draw comparisons there to like maybe some of the crew from Firefly. Maybe Kaylee from Firefly, where she can kind of fix things on a shoestring. She knows the true value of your mechanical components when other people might overlook them, and she can fix pretty much anything.
Yeah. And when it comes to building a starfighter, which is intrinsic to the character just as much as the core stats.
Yeah.
Some games when they do that, they end up going way into the weeds with that. Was it a tricky thing to balance being very approachable while still having a degree of customization?
No, the designing your starfighter was actually one of the first elements of the game that it's part of the reason why I wanted to make a sci-fi starfightery based game. Was I had this idea in my head of how you could do it but keep it relatively straightforward and simple, and then I kind of expanded everything else about the system around it. So the game's actually built around the idea that you're starfighter pilots.
Yeah, which certainly helps move things along a bit more.
Yeah.
And doubly so when it comes to skills. I think you and I have both seen games that go particularly overboard when it comes to the skill list. I certainly saw that a lot through the 90s.
Oh yeah, games in the 90s had massive skill lists. Some games still have that, like Call of Cthulhu's skill list is pretty
Shadowrun.
big. Yeah, Shadowrun. Yeah. I like to have a decent selection of skills if I'm using skill lists in games, but I try not to overdo it.
Yeah. And especially since you have skills and specialties.
Yeah.
Which the whole skill specialty thing is another thing that has its own potential, but it seems like the approach that you've taken is that there is still a hard cap when it comes to how much you can put into specialties.
Yeah, so like there's only 3 specialties for each skill instead of allowing players to kind of come up with their own, and you're limited by the amount of ranks you have in the core skill for what you can put into specialties, so they kind of keep each other in check.
Yeah, it's especially since you're not doing XP. It sounds like it's basically a milestone affair.
Yeah.
You're either getting 1 rank in a skill or 2 ranks in a specialty.
Yeah. Or you can split the 2 points in specialties between multiple, but yeah, you're one core skill or 2 specialty points is what you get after every mission or every story hook or story beat or whatever you want to call them. Yeah.
But I think what helps dodge that issue is there is the attribute skill relationship.
Yeah. It's the game, like, there's no attributes, it's just all skills. And your dice pool is based off the combination of your primary skill and the speciality that's related to the situation that you're rolling for. And you keep an amount of dice equal to your core skill. But it just, like, if you have points in specialities, it means you've got a bigger chance criticals with 6s and stuff like that you can keep. And so you kind of want to balance between the amount of dice that you keep versus the amount that you're rolling in total.
And since we're dealing with a dice pool, how would you have criticals be triggered?
So 6s on your D6 rolls are considered critical dice. So if you're doing a simple test, which is a single roll, and you're just adding up all your successes, critical dice, your 6s count as 2 success points. And combat, which are complex tests where every dice is its own action. 6s tend to get you more damage or let you move further or let you heal. That's or like reduce damage by a larger degree. So the 6s on your dice pool are generally just considered that bit better than rolling a 4 or 5, which are the other 2 success levels.
I can certainly get that. And with some of the approaches that you have to equipment, it is on the loose end of things. But I do find it interesting that you have it where there's an optimal range and a inoperable range when it comes to weapons. Was part of that to make sure that individual weapons, especially ranged weapons, don't get overly useful?
Yeah, it's to encourage players to maybe spend some of their successes to move during combat instead of just sitting back and unloading. uh, Especially if people are wanting to use melee weapons, in case like they're going to have to move to get in close.
Mm-hmm.
So it's to encourage a bit of movement, to try and get yourself into the most beneficial position for combat.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, I can certainly see that. What immediately came to mind is the way games like BattleTech handle weapon ranges,
yeah,
where just because you have a missile doesn't mean it's gonna be a good idea depending on where your target is.
yeah. Like if your target's right next to you, you're probably not going to want to fire a missile.
No, um, and depending on the mech that you have, being in that kind of close range is where you want to be. Like if you're using, say, a hunchback.
Yeah.
Especially
Yes.
since a lot of people think, "Oh, I'll just disable that big gun on your shoulder and you'll be helpless." And the hunchback is like, "I've got 2 fists and I'm gonna make them your problem."
Yeah, yeah. So I'll just deal with you up close instead then.
And in the same vein, I always love bringing up the Highlander um, mech in that because of the whole Highlander burial stunt, where the Highlander is a heavy mech with jump jets. So pilots, being pilots, decided to use it to DFA land on people, and what's become known as the Highlander burial, because that's literally what happened. Just landing right on them, and some will get even more obnoxious by having bagpipes play as they're falling down, just to let them know, I want you to know that I'm coming, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Seems pretty fitting for what bagpipes were intended for.
And if that sounds extreme, well, there are one of the most famous fighter planes in history has a larger radar profile than the actual plane. It wants you to know it's coming.
Yeah.
But
yeah, because it's psychological at that point.
Yeah, and psychological warfare. I've always told people, do not underestimate the power of psychological warfare in terms of just the look of something. We even see that in that same sort of space western, because if somebody just walks in with a Mandalorian helm, everybody starts getting nervous.
Yeah.
And that is the way it should be. There is the classic thing in the western of the stranger going into the bar and everybody is looking at them like what's about to happen here.
Yeah, definitely. And the imposing presence is usually enough to put some people off trying their luck.
Mm-hmm. But when it came to transients, was there an emphasis to make sure that it's just a extension of that skill specialization system?
Yeah. The thing with transients is a lot of the abilities around it allow you to replace other skills with the transients ability because you're able to do them psychically. Like you can treat injuries with biomancy, or you can pilot with, or you interactions with telepathy type skills. But it's just that you flavour it more towards space wizard, mystic, psychic type.
Yeah.
Ideal.
Yeah, I could see. It kind of reminds me of how Use the Force got treated in Saga Edition.
Yeah.
Though I'd say the difference here is for one, you don't have as many individual uses of it, and it's unless I'm mistaken, it sounds like whenever you're advancing, you can choose between developing the transient skill or getting new transient abilities.
Yeah. So yeah, if you're a mystic character or a character of the transient skill, then you start getting the option to take disciplines, which are your psychic powers essentially. So yeah, you kind of have that choice of, do I want to be good at other skills, or do I want to be better at psychic abilities that I've got, or do I want to unlock some new tricks that I can pull out?
Now, is it a case where somebody would need to have the mystic archetype in order to develop transient skills, or could they do that later on?
They could do that later on, as long as like them and the GM can agree with how or why they've developed those skills. Like if in a story arc they're being captured and experimented on, then cool, they might have developed some transience abilities from those experiments, or it might have been hidden potential they didn't quite realise that they had until they encountered a certain NPC, or so there's no limitations to whether or not you can get those abilities. It's just narratively how you would work that out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can certainly get that. And when it comes to the different factions and different planets, I did see that there's a variety to work with.
Yeah.
When it comes to the factions, I end up getting some parallels, like with the Hyperion. For whatever reason, I ended up thinking, obviously thinking of the Galactic Empire, but also more Byzantine affairs, or more like the toll booth that was the Holy Roman Empire.
Yeah. So like the Empire in Star Wars is an influence. But yeah, those more complicated political bureaucratic systems. There's some other sci-fi, like probably some of the groups within Dune, or some of the factions that you'd probably find in Star Trek as well, are probably equally relatable.
Yeah. And at the same time, I did appreciate each one of those major ones having their own particular flag. I could, in the same vein, parallel the Voidwalker cartel to the Black Suns, which is the biggest criminal cartel in Star Wars.
Yeah. Star Wars is criminal underworld, definitely an influence. The cartel for wild space. Like I always kind of like the idea that you had the Empire and the Rebellion or the Republic and whatnot, Trade Federation, but like there was always the potential that the criminal element in the galaxy could rival those larger factions. But they just most of the time choose not to.
That and when you end up, I've mentioned this elsewhere, but when you end up hyper focusing on two major factions for any kind of setting, you can run the risk of having the Moriarty problem of everything being bottlenecked to just those two. That's part of the reason why I wasn't the big fan of the way the worm is treated in Werewolf. How everything is somehow tied to the worm. That doesn't
connected to it. Yeah.
That ends up constricting the universe more than it does expand it.
Yeah, because then everything feels a little bit too tightly knit and hard to separate.
Mm-hmm. So, even if they don't have the same level of influence, having some that have some level of influence, it certainly works.
Yeah. And they allow for different types of stories to be told, depending on the group that you're playing with and the characters that you've made, and yeah, that sort of stuff.
So, to that end, would you say the Starbound League is more akin to the Outer Rim territories that have their own particular pull?
Yeah, like your Outer Rim domains that kind of sit beyond the Republic, or like your outliers in Firefly, like your former brown coats and stuff like that, who maybe trying to eke out a living, and they're kind of making any sort of alliances they can to make that their way of life easier and to kind of protect themselves. Yeah. They have the potential to blow up into a full-blown like rebellion faction if you want to go that way and tell that sort of story, but yeah, they're a collective of like-minded planets and individuals who they might not always agree, but they have shared interests and shared sort of goals in mind.
I could probably also draw a parallel to the Free Worlds League, although not nearly as chaotic.
Yeah, they're a bit more structured than that. They are a bit more democratic, apart from in some of the more out there worlds where they kind of their name, but not.
And technically speaking, the Free Worlds League is a parliamentary government.
Yeah.
Practically speaking, it is a military dictatorship because they've spent 200 years giving emergency powers to the Captain General.
Yeah, like they're definitely not the dictatorship element. They're more akin to what they're supposed to be, which is an elected group of individuals.
Mm-hmm. But with that kind of thing in mind, when it comes to the adversary end of things, I did notice that it is it's certainly on the loose end of things. How large have you had encounters be as far as the number of participants in the playtest that you've done?
So before releasing the game, I ran a 3-part adventure with a group of 5 players, and they had a dogfight where there was twice as many enemy fighters as player characters, and then they had a encounter during the adventure when they were on the ground, where they had like a group of 6 mooks and then one bigger, tougher enemy to kind of deal with. The dogfight went a little bit more in favour of the players than the ground fight did, and that's kind of how I'm intended the game to play through anyway. You should feel a little bit safer on your starfighter. But yeah, like the dogfight had like 15 participants or characters involved, and the ground fight had 12. So yeah, sizable conflicts. Like the players weren't outnumbering the enemies at any point.
Yeah, it's one of those tricky things, since if you have too many, you can end up having those very long affairs or cases where where some of the players are looking at their phones.
Yeah. And like the amount of health and stuff that characters have, particularly NPCs, isn't particularly high. that's by design. That's so like you might have longer combats, but they're not going to, or they shouldn't drag on to be like 2 or 3 hour long, practically taking the full session affairs.
I can certainly get that. And with that in mind, something I'm curious about that for potential future support is have you considered some sort of planet generator in the future?
Um, Possibly. Actually, hadn't really considered that. Like, but yeah, coming because it's a newly expanded part of space. Like, being able to come up with new worlds and stuff on the fly would probably be really helpful for particularly people GMing the game. So I might like pull together at least some tables or something like that for a freebie.
Yeah.
And I plan to put out mostly small free updates for wild space, like new wild traits or new weapons and equipment or transient abilities, adversaries, spaceships, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that would make sense. I wouldn't expect this to have the same the same level of detail with those expanded planets as say Traveler.
Yeah. Probably not even as much detail as the ones that are in the core book, where they kind of outline the planet and then give you like 3 or 4 adventure hooks as well, like sort of a more general view of worlds, probably that the GM can then play around with and make their own.
Yep. Which I can certainly get that. Now, with that in mind, I will also note that I appreciate that even if the book is only 100 pages, it is doing the 2 things that I keep kidding on so many people about. That being bookmarks and indexes. Even hyperlinks. I've talked with you about this before about how big of a deal I make when it comes to navigation.
Yeah. So yeah, I think I'm getting a little bit better with contents and index pages. The index for Wild Space is pretty much an expanded contents page that just goes into more specific categories instead of listing every page you can find particular keywords on. But in some cases that's a bit more helpful because then you don't turn to pages where it's like the word is listed once and doesn't actually give you any details. But yeah, like I thought like a basic index like that would be helpful for most gaming groups.
That, and there's been plenty of cases of folks spending a lot of time looking up that one specific rule. Grappling will always come to mind in certain games.
Yep.
So it's good. So it is good to have that kind of thing, and having it in both. Even if a game has searchable text, it's always best to operate under the assumption that not everyone is going to be playing just digitally.
Yeah, digitally, yeah. Where we've got full access to all the PDF reader tools and stuff.
Because people do play at cons, and you're not going to be lugging around your full tower at a convention.
Yeah.
I mean, some people will, but that's a conscious choice at that point.
yeah, they've made their decision. They went with that. But there, I do have physical copies of Wild Space. I did a small print run for taking to conventions and stuff like that. So, like, if you know you're going to play the game in person, then that's always an option. But the bookmarks aren't quite as helpful as they are in the PDF reader. On them and jump directly to the chapter.
Oh yeah, I can certainly get that. But with that said, I do want to sincerely thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to come all the way to my monastery once again to enjoy the madness that happens here.
Yeah, no worries, man. It's always good, always a blast.
And anytime you see fit to return, the door is always open.
I'm pretty sure I'll have some other games coming out next year that we can talk about.
Yeah, probably. And given some of the stuff I'm planning on doing with Legend Edition, there's always the opportunity to swap notes there.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely the upside of both of us developing a game that have this similar or the same influences in some cases.
And of course, a sincere thanks goes out to everyone who took the time out of their schedule to come onto the show and enjoy the madness. And there will be plenty more where that came from, as there always is here on the open bar of the internet. But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra. I am your gaming monk. Stay fucking frosty, everybody.
Thank you.